ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, America's Cup fans. Welcome to the Inside Tack Inside. It's raining cats and dogs in Barcelona today. It was kind of like sailing in the Solent, I thought, which may or may not have had a feature on the outcome of the racing. 2 races today in the LV final, races 9 and races 10 on day number 6. I've got those numbers right for the first time. And yeah, the deadlock was kind of broken today. We won 2 races against Prada in extremely close racing, in extremely hard conditions, and it tested our sailing team, shore team to the max, to be honest. It was full on out there. Not quite the weather we were expecting. It was windier than we thought, and actually a very aggressive, confused sea state that we had to deal with. And we had 2 proper punch-ups with Prada, as we knew we would. And to help us go through those 2 races in great detail, sailor, trimmer, performance legend Ian Jensen. Good to have you back, mate. Was on first time yesterday. Such high ratings back in today. And we bumped Jars off with his rubbish new haircut and got match racing hero and super coach Ian Williams. Gooby, we sat this time yesterday saying, oh, it looks like 9 to 14s tomorrow, a little bit of sea state, but that wasn't the case, was it, chap?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely got a bit more breeze than that. We were sort of seeing 15 to 18, but so not quite at the top of the wind limit, but definitely a lot harder than the last couple of days, I think, just with the sea state. There was a significantly bigger and also shorter period and a little bit confused as well. So the boys did well to manage the boat. I think both teams would have had their moments out there, and it was hard watching.
It was hard watching. And you referenced yesterday how you said the first hour, the hour of warm-up, is going to be key. And that kind of was ringing in the back of my head all day. And every time we sailed, stopped the boat for 10 minutes, did a bit more warm-up, that sea state just built another 20 centimetres. The frequency got a bit more weird, and it was really hard to kind of find your mode, because the mode that we were sailing the boat in from first sheeting on to crossing the finishing line of race 2, there was never a 10-minute period where it was the same, where the boys could settle. They were really having to learn all day, right?
Yeah, that's right. I guess the sea state just kept building, but yeah, you kind of have your settings that you zone in on for the day, and like Fred said, that was very changeable all day. So having to try to work out the clearance they have and where they need to position the cant to manage that clearance, and then in the manoeuvres that has a knock-on effect as well. So it's very tricky, and I think our team found the right balance today.
We've just come out of the capture, which is our hot debrief, where the sailing team and key members of the design team all get together and you quickly get your thoughts down on paper, and then people can have a breath and go away. And a comment that stuck out to me was from Lee McMillan, one of our trimmer pilots, and he was just like, look lads, don't be too critical on us overnight. Basically saying it wasn't a day for looking at the data and going, oh, you could have tweaked this a little bit there, a little bit. It really was a kind of flying by the seat of your pants day all day, and reviewing your performance on the fly and trying to get better for the next manoeuvre, let alone the next race, right?
Yeah, for sure. It was a day for being a little bit conservative at times, making sure, you keep the boat under control, but also not going too conservative, because if you keep sailing conservative and losing distance, eventually you end up behind. So it's picking your moments when you need to be conservative, but also pushing at the right times when you get a flat spot, to do a jibe in, do a quicker one if you get that flat spot. But then if there's if you're jibing in the big waves, for sure, just take it safe. Don't worry about giving away a bit of distance.
So that was the general flavour of the day. We kind of woke up this morning before our last weather update came in from our Meteo team, Cappy, at 9 o'clock, thinking, okay, we might be in a 10 to 14 knot day. That wasn't the case. It was a step up. We adjusted and we went out on the water, as Gooby said. We did do a good warm up, and we fired into race 9. Now, bearing in mind, as you all know, we were 4-all going into today. So I mean, every day's colossal in the Louis Vuitton Cup final, but this was a massive day. Ian, talk us through your pre-start world for race number 9.
Yeah, well, again, difficult in these wavy conditions. Luna Rossa came out pretty aggressive actually, and went for this roll over the top of us that they haven't gone for before, which means they're early for the line, and we're really trying to push them to be even earlier for the line here, and they're trying to what we call fishtail and sort of wriggle and slow their boat down, but without us hooking to leeward and forcing them to tack. And I have to say, in a very tricky position, they do a great job here of just not giving away the penalty, holding us up just enough to get off the line in okay shape. Having said that, super happy with our start. We had a decent chunk of bias, a more settled boat at start time, and definitely a great start from the boys. And
just to explain to our viewers why Ben would have hit the protest button there, what was he asking a question of the umpires for there?
Well, it's very close. If we're clear astern behind them, then the basic rule is overtaking boat keeps clear. But as soon as we become overlapped, in this case to leeward, we become right of way. And if that had been the case, then I think this would have been a penalty on Luna Rossa. But it's very, very close. But we just weren't. Maybe there was a metre extra that they had. And we were not overlapped. You can see it very close here, just our bowsprit. So yeah, as it was on the umpire app, we're not overlapped, so the umpires made the right call here.
What was quite funny in my world here, Goobs, was I was to leeward, looking at all the sheet load numbers, looking at all the stuff that matters in my world. I could tell we were doing a cheeky little bit of fishtailing because the main sheet load was going up and down. And at one moment, Ben Cornish, the cycler who's opposite me on the other side, to words of some effect went, "Oh golly gosh." And I think I've just seen, that is literally the first time I've just seen that, and I think I can see why. It's getting pretty sporty in the pre-starts now, isn't it? Let's be honest, as you'd expect, the boats are coming much closer together.
Yeah, I mean, as Ian alluded to, the Italian guys were very aggressive. And they did a great job, I guess, in the end, because they were clear ahead, so they didn't give away the penalty, but I can understand why Cornish was saying golly gosh, because I mean, when you're on board those boats and you're doing 40 knots, to put the bow in front of someone like that, that's a big move, and so I guess both well played by both teams. We avoided well enough, and they managed to not let us get the overlap and get the penalty.
And we move on to leg 1 of that race. I presume from that point they split. We went left, they went right, came back together, and we had a decision whether we were going to kind of tack underneath or duck, and we ducked, right? I'm just checking.
Yep, we ducked, and I think this was key because I think I guess Dylan on the helm, but the whole team did a great job of this duck. Actually, they're not easy at those closing speeds. Both boats doing 40 knots. And then a moment later, we each trade tacks, and they have a similar situation where they have to duck us. And they do an okay job, but definitely not as good as us. And
so in what then, in your mind, defines a good duck or a bad duck? Is it like how close you are to the transom or angle to the wind?
Yeah, I think it's, I guess that it's the outcome, after the whole thing is finished and you're back both up to speed, how far behind are you? And,
right.
And if we review it, we ended up about 20 metres behind, having ducked. They ended up about 40 metres behind. And there's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, the distance at the actual duck is part of it. But then how smoothly you turn the boat back up onto the wind, get the sails all back in. Those are all tricky things to do. And as I say, super happy with how we executed that.
And Ian, as a trimmer pilot in that world, you talked yesterday, your mindset up in the pre-start is being one step ahead of the helmsman so you can be really preemptive with your next manoeuvre. I guess when you're on port and there's a live conversation about whether you're going to tack underneath or duck, you must literally just have your hands hovered over everything, ready to do anything at that moment, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you do the duck, ideally you'd have the cant move, you'd have the main sheet move, you'd have jib car move.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of adjustments to make. and you know it's a big heavy boat that wants to keep going the direction it's going.
Right.
So you could actually see there the Italians, the reason they ended up 40 metres behind is they did a little slide on the other side of it. So they didn't have the grip, which means that there was a lot of side load from the sails and maybe not as much grip from the foil. So there's a slight imbalance there.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean that's all part and parcel of the technique, and I think they were at a slightly worse angle to come back up onto the breeze than we were, and that's where that extra 20 metres comes from.
Right. And the remainder of that race, we after that 2 exchanges, we led round the top gate, had a small extension, but I believe the lead never really got out above 150 metres ever, right? It was like we were on a piece of string going around the race course. And there was, again, I haven't watched any of the racing, but there was a bit of a moment for the Italians going round a bottom gate later on, and they had a slight wobble as they exited the gate, and we took a 50-metre chunk out of them in that moment. That could have been the end of the race at that point.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunate for them, but it just shows how difficult the conditions are. They get a particularly big wave there, and it just puts the bow into the water, and then the rudder lets go.
And Goobs, obviously coming from a monohull background, as we actually all do, where you're sailing in the water, a lot of questions we get asked is how much, surely the waves don't really affect these foils because the hull, the main bit of the boat, is out of the water, so it's not like you're riding the waves traditionally. As a foil trimmer, are you kind of trimming to the waves, over the top of the waves and down the waves?
I mean, it really depends on the period of the wave.
Right.
I think upwind today, you probably, I'm guessing because I wasn't sailing the boat, but I would say you're probably not following the waves because the time that the boat goes from one wave to another is quite short because you're going fast.
Yeah.
So you're setting an average.
Right.
But then downwind, because you're with the waves, if the period's a bit longer, then sometimes you can follow a little bit, yeah.
And kind of get a bit of a surf on, a bit of a step down.
Just with the immersion. So as you go through a trough, bring it down a little bit, and as you go through a peak, you bring it up a little bit. I think you're spot on with the waves do affect these boats. As you go through the trough there, what actually happens is the rudder gets really low on immersion, and then you've got quite a bit of loading over quite a short section of rudder.
Yeah, tiny bit of rudder, isn't it?
Tiny bit of rudder, yeah. And everyone pushes to have the smallest rudder because until it lets go, you really want to have the least amount of area in the water possible. So all it's doing is just slowing you down. But that's why you see the teams run into some of these issues with we've had our fair share of rudder losses, and so has Luna Rossa, because everyone's pushing it.
And just, I mean, for the general sailing public out there, when we are kind of in a happy spot with the rudder area in the water, just the vertical, it's kind of about the same size as wetted surface area as a laser rudder, isn't it, really? Let's be honest. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Doing 50 knots with a 6.5 ton boat on top of it. So that race went our way. It was in a phenomenal battle, and Prada sailed bloody well and were nipping at our heels, and the comms we were kind of getting in our cycler loop was, got to be clean here, lads. We're only one slight slip away, but we didn't, and we sailed away and took that win, and we went 5-4 up. Had a stop, as we always do, had a breather. Sea State built, oh my goodness, we've chased our mothership alongside our boat in between races. There was a conversation going on between Jeff Causey and myself about whether it was safe to have the chase boat there. It really was chopped up, but there was a noticeable, could you kind of see it from your world, that noticeable increase in sea state going into race 2?
Yeah, I think we can't really see the waves on the water, but we can see the effect on the boats.
Gotcha.
We can see how difficult it is to manage from overwatch up high.
Yeah.
But yeah, as soon as we get into the race, you can just see that the boats are a challenge to handle.
They certainly were. So that was the kind of state of play going into race 10. The boats were a challenge to handle, and in the pre-start in race 10.
Yeah, and again, Luna Rossa came out pretty aggressive here. They dive in for a hook when we jibe here. But again, we do a nice job of just keeping that overlap clear so that we're not taking any risk on the penalties.
Yeah.
And from here, we again just managed the time, I think, really nicely, so as not to be early for the pin and start close under their bow, which in match racing is a great position to start.
Yeah, and the thing that and it was something we talked about at the beginning of the day is kind of the one board world versus two board world, and how people use windward dagger boards to slow them down if they're a little bit early. And you can see here Luna Rossa put their dagger board down, we have our dagger board up, and as we wind up to the lines together, and the communication and the sail loading and the foil loading around those transitions is super hard, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I don't think it was yesterday. I think it was the day before we did the opposite. We did a two board and they did a one board,
right.
And we had a little debrief and it's like, oh yeah, maybe we should go to the one board. And I wonder if they had a little debrief and said, oh, those guys are doing it two boards. Let's try that. I don't know if that happened.
I'll tell you what, we'll never know, and no. They will now know because we've just said it.
Sorry, giving it away.
Mate. That's all right. We are all having the same conversations for sure. And you would call that start kind of an even-ish start, although they were, as you said, they were on our hip in a tight lane. So
yeah, both boats are off the line fast, but for sure, if you have that tight separation to leeward, it's a very difficult spot for the windward boat to be. And we were able to pull out, I think, 20 or 30 metres in that short board towards the first boundary, and that was pretty pivotal in the race. So
the first lap and a half, maybe 2 laps of that race, we defended the race course, both teams sailing immaculately well, given the sea state, Goobs. And I was in the chase boat at the time, just as I was having a breath out, going 250 metre lead here, we can have a breather. That was not the case, right? We had the stickiest jibe of our day, and we could hear it on the comms, Ben saying the rudder's gone here, the rudder's gone here. And we went from a 300 metre lead to a 70 metre lead in about 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you can never take your foot off the gas, that's for sure, especially when there's conditions like that. You can see we have a little touchdown on the bow there, and the reaction is to bring the bow up, which is the right thing to do, but because of the touchdown, we get a little bit slow, and then on the exit we get a little leeward heeled as well, and there's a slight imbalance with the sails.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's like I was saying before, the immersion on the rudder just gets a little low there, and it's just too much loading for that section to take, and she trips. But the really good thing that the guys did was I think they left that windward board down and managed to get the sails in a position where the rudder was kind of back to being in a good state.
Yes.
And rather than putting the bustle in the water, they managed to get the rudder back and not have a complete major, and managed to hold on to the lead there, which was probably pivotal in the race, I guess.
And you're a sort of fantastic moth sailor, had some amazing results at the Moth World, so you are a foiling helmsman as well. What does it mean, rudder's gone here? Does it mean that Ben and Dylan are like this and absolutely nothing's going on? Completely lost grip, like driving a clown car?
Yeah, when the rudder's gone, you're a passenger. You
Really?
can't steer either direction, so you're going straight, and often you do give it a little wobble to try to get it back.
Right.
But
and is there anything the pilots can do? Is everybody shaking everything, just trying to get grip, or how do you try and save it?
You try to put more rudder in the water.
Right.
I think. Try to put more rudder in the water and balance up the sails.
And this isn't an us problem. We have seen all teams lose rudder. We've seen American Magic lose rudders. We've seen Prada lose rudders. Everybody, it is, as you said, the least amount of rudder in the water, the faster you go. But it gets to a point where you want a little bit more rudder back and be able to drive a bit more, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you were bob on the money there, Goobs, where it would have been quite easy in that situation to panic, peel the windward board and have a low amount of main sheet, and things in that situation can spiral down really quickly. But the thing that impressed me from our boys in that situation is they knew they had not made a mistake, lost the rudder, and they actually stayed calm, dropped the board, trimmed the sails on, and then jibed and went left turn at the bottom to lead Prada away to that favoured gate, favoured side. And that decision was maybe the race-saving decision, Ian. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, funny enough, coming into there, we were saying, oh, we think the left side's a bit better, but it looks like we're going to go right gate just to minimise manoeuvres.
Yeah.
And then we had the bad jibe, which put us above ley line, and it showed great presence of mind just to, like you say, compose ourselves, get the boat back under control, and then make a very quick decision. Left gate now, and let's get this race back under control.
Yeah, and a shout out to Harry Leask, Ryan Todd Hunter, Neil Hunter and Luke Parkinson, the 4 cyclors that were on for that race. That 40 seconds from losing the rudder, getting all the sails trimmed back on, the jibe, the roundup, and then to boundary and the tack was some of the highest powers we've ever seen on the boat. And I think Parko went on comms and he said, lads, if you've got a match to burn, now is the time. And I thought that was very wise from Luke Parkinson, a man who's sailed around the world a fair few times. So yeah, shout out to those boys. Incredibly proud. That was epic. Yeah, I think we're going to have a little breath there. It was obviously a good day for us, but we're not getting ahead of ourselves, are we, whatsoever? I mean, we're 6-4 up. We're against one of the best sailing teams in the world, one of the most cultured, one of the most grounded, talented sailing teams in the world. So yeah, like I said, we're not getting ahead of ourselves, and I think we did allow the Chase 4 cam. Is that our coach boat, Chase 4? I think they did have a little bit of a dance when we crossed the line, and you are allowed. One of our team mottos is celebrate the wins when you can. And Louis, I think we've got a little clip of oh, here we go, high fives all round. There's Ryan Todd Hunter, our Zoolander in office. Giles almost looks happy there as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
But I think more than anything, it was a hugely testing day for boat sailors, shore team, and to come away with a couple of wins is a cracker. We will do a couple of questions as we are here. Question 1 from Carol Dent. I've been interested to hear about the differences in rudder and foils that played in today's performance. Did the configuration make it easier in such rough conditions? I guess we're talking about the difference in foils between us and them. Now, obviously, we know a lot about our foils. We guess what their foils are. We know that their foils are slightly bigger I think they're like 7-8% bigger in surface area than our foils. Does a bigger foil surface area make it easier to sail in those conditions, Goobs? What do you think? Or is there so much going on that it's kind of doesn't matter?
There's a lot going on, but I think the larger foils should make it a little bit easier at slower speeds because you have ventilation issues. Basically, if you have a high loading on a board that pierces the surface of the water, which they always do when it's very wavy like that, then you can actually suck air down towards the junction, and you can come out of the sky, and you have to rebuild from scratch basically. So that normally happens at slow speeds when you've got a load on the board. So I guess the smaller boards are potentially a little harder on the exit of manoeuvres, or when you're going quite slowly, if you have a bad moment. The thing that works against them a little bit is they've got the dry bulb. So if you look on their canter, they've got a big chunk of lead that just sits out of the water, and
that's on the front, right?
That's on the front, yeah.
Whereas ours is on the back of the foil.
Ours is on the back.
There you go.
And I guess when that starts to get in the water, that could cause a significant amount of drag, I guess. So as it gets wavier, the intention for that is always to be out, I think. As it gets wavier, that gets a bit more challenging. So there are some differences. It's hard to know. Exactly.
That's the magic of the America's Cup, right?
Yeah.
The small differences. Next question. We've kind of touched on this already from Keith Brettel. And it's talking about the constant movement of the foil in accordance with the wave motion and continuously matching hull height. Goobs, you kind of talked about how you think we approach today, but there is a constant conversation going on about hull height, like height off the water, which is very simple in flat water. There's a constant conversation about the pitch of the boat, which is the angle of the boat, sort of nose up, nose down, and the roll of the boat. And there's a non-stop conversation between sort of 4 to 5 to 6 people on the boat about those 3 dynamics and how they interact. and that's tricky and wavy stuff, which is why Keith probably saw it so dynamic. But the pitch roll heave conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I guess it just shows how important teamwork is on the boat to match those things up, and it does get a little bit tricky because obviously when there's bigger waves, you need to find clearance somewhere, and so that's either by piercing the foil more or reducing your cant angle so as the boat sits a bit higher, or coming pitch up, and it's a little bit of a balance the guys play to work out what best the boat state should be, and you can't have it all. You can't have your cant all the way out, have your tip under the surface, and have the pitch at the optimum state if there's big waves around. So, yeah, it is a constant conversation, and it's a good amount of teamwork to get that one right.
There you go. Question 3 from JIW. What is the system to keep track of the boat's measurements and keeping within the rules? And is there a constant process of assessment? Ian, one for you. We've basically had measurers living with us in-house now for at least since the semi-finals, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. I don't really deal with this area of the rules, to be honest with you, but as I understand it, there are measurers that come out on our chase boat every day to monitor what we're doing. Yeah. They have essentially open access to come and look at anything. I think any time. I guess Correct. They give us warning. I'm not sure. But yes, it is a constant process of ensuring compliance with the rules. Yeah, and the measurers are in. Sort of, you measure sails in right goob, so we have a certain amount of sails and you card them and measure them, and if you make any sail adjustments you have to declare that. So in sail world it's locked down pretty hard, right? You get a sticker on your sail and that's you can't change it.
Can't change it for the event, no.
There you go.
You can still measure in new sails during the event, but yeah, there's I think once you've got the sticker, or you might be able to remeasure if you make a change, actually.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
And in terms of the measurer on the water with us, a measurer is literally on Chase 2. Chase 2 is our mothership. And we have an America's Cup measurer with us all day. And every single bit of hardware that comes on and off the boat, you have to sign on and off with the measurer, including people, including sails, including jib pennants, including corrector weights, every single thing they are keeping an eye on. It's like having the headmaster over your shoulder at all times checking your homework, which never went well in my case. Tomorrow, I think we're coming up for air, aren't we? Have we done 5 days in a row? I've lost count. We're not racing tomorrow, right?
Not racing tomorrow.
God for that.
Yeah, we're not racing. Yeah, 5 days in a row since Saturday. I think
we've
been racing.
Okay, so we've done 10 races. We've done 5 days in a row. I think some of the greatest racing that we've ever seen in sailing, or am I just getting a bit? I'm still very caffeinated, but it's pretty cool to watch, isn't it?
It's really cool to watch, and actually, it's pretty impressive that the shore guys can keep these technological boats on the water for 5 days straight.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Massive shout out to both shore teams. Actually, it's phenomenal. So tomorrow is a non-race day. We go into race 11 and 12 on Friday. Forecast right now, but it's very changeable, is looking at the lighter end, kind of 6 to 11 knots with between 0.5 metre and 1 metre of sea state. So that's coming our way on Friday. We're going to have a breather. We're going to service the boat, have a little look at the boat, talk about having a sail tomorrow, who knows. But yeah, it was a good day for us, but we are a long way getting ahead of ourselves. We know that one of the greatest sailing teams of the last quarter of the century is breathing down our neck, so we're not counting our chickens. We enjoyed today, it was a good day, but we move on, and we'll move on with the next Inside Tack on Friday evening. Hope you can join us then.